Commander Juno of the Vorkarian battleship Doomsayer expected to kill the human girl, but found herself experiencing unexpected pleasure instead. The towering, blue-skinned Vorkarian female loomed over her captive, muscles tense with anticipation. Her mandibles clicked in frustration as she studied the small, soft-looking human before her. Terry Scott, the lone occupant of a human vessel intercepted in neutral space, stood defiant despite his restraints. His brown eyes met Juno's four red ones without flinching. The human's resilience puzzled the Vorkarian commander, who had broken countless prisoners before. The Doomsayer's interrogation chamber hummed with energy. Harsh lights cast stark shadows across the metal walls. Juno circled Terry, her clawed feet clicking against the floor. She had expected this human to crumble quickly, revealing valuable intelligence about Earth's military capabilities. Instead, he remained steadfast, his resolve unwavering. "You will break, human," Juno growled, her translator conveying the menace in her voice. "The Vorkarian Empire demands answers." Terry's lips curled into a smirk. "I'm flattered by the attention, Commander, but I'm afraid I don't have the information you want." His casual tone caught Juno off guard. She felt an unfamiliar sensation in her thorax, a warmth she couldn't explain. The human's endurance and psychological strength intrigued her. These traits were rare among the species the Vorkarians had conquered in their quest for galactic dominance. As the interrogation dragged on, Juno found herself drawn to Terry's quick wit and charm. He deflected her questions with humor, his responses eliciting strange reactions within her. The commander's preconceived notions about humans began to crumble. Terry, sensing Juno's growing interest, shifted his tactics. He met her gaze with the intensity that made her antennae quiver. "You know, Commander, under different circumstances, I might have asked you out for a drink." Juno's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of Vorkarian embarrassment. "Foolish human, your attempts at manipulation will fail." But Terry's words had their intended effect. Juno felt her resolve weakening, her duty to the Vorkarian Empire clashing with these new, alien emotions. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the Doomsayer. A human fleet had arrived, demanding Terry's immediate release. Juno's superior appeared on a holographic display, mandibles gnashing furiously. "Execute the human, Commander. Show these vermin the strength of the Vorkarian Empire." Juno's four hands clenched into fists. She looked at Terry, saw the challenge in his eyes. In that moment, she made a decision that would alter the course of two civilizations. With swift movements, she released Terry's restraints. "Come with me if you want to live," she hissed, leading him towards the escape pods. As they ran through the Doomsayer's corridors, alarms screaming around them, Juno realized she had committed treason. There was no going back. When they reached the escape pod, she hesitated for only a second before climbing in after Terry. The pod jettisoned from the Doomsayer, hurtling towards the human fleet. Inside, Vorkarian and human sat side by side, the beginnings of an unlikely alliance that would challenge everything they thought they knew about each other's species and themselves. As the stars streaked past the pod's viewport, Juno turned to Terry. "I was wrong about you, human. About all of you." Terry's hand found hers, a gesture that sent shivers through Juno's exoskeleton. "We have a lot to learn about each other, Commander, and I'm looking forward to every moment of it." The escape pod rocketed away from the Doomsayer, its occupants an unlikely pair united by circumstance. As the stars blurred into streaks outside the viewport, the reality of their situation settled upon them. Juno's antennae twitched nervously as she surveyed the pod's cramped interior. The space, designed for human occupants, felt suffocatingly small to her towering Vorkarian frame. Her exoskeleton scraped against the metal walls, and she tucked her limbs close to her body, trying to minimize contact with the unfamiliar surfaces. Terry watched her discomfort with growing concern. "Are you all right, Commander?" he asked, his voice soft in the confined space. Juno's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound Terry was beginning to recognize as a sign of agitation. "This vessel, it's not suited for Vorkarian physiology," she managed, her translator struggling to convey the strain in her voice. Terry nodded, understanding dawning on his face. "I see. Human escape pods aren't exactly designed with interspecies comfort in mind." He paused, considering his next words carefully. May I show you something that might help? Juno's four red eyes fixed on him, a mix of wariness and curiosity in her gaze. She nodded once, a jerky motion that betrayed her nervousness. Slowly, telegraphing his movements, Terry reached out and placed a hand gently on Juno's shoulder. She flinched at the contact, her entire body tensing. This is a human gesture of comfort, Terry explained, keeping his voice low and soothing. It's meant to convey support and understanding. Juno remained rigid for a moment, her species' instinctive aversion to physical contact warring with her curiosity about human customs. Gradually, she relaxed, her exoskeleton losing some of its rigidity under Terry's touch. Fascinating, she murmured, her translator picking up the genuine interest in her tone. Vorkarians rarely engage in physical contact outside of combat or mating rituals. Terry smiled, encouraged by her response. Humans are quite tactile. We use touch to communicate a wide range of emotions. As they continued their conversation, the pod's communication system suddenly crackled to life, startling them both. Unidentified escape pod, this is Admiral Marcus Steele of the human space fleet. Identify yourself immediately, a stern voice commanded through the speaker. Terry leaned towards the comm unit, his heart racing. Admiral Steele, this is Terry Scott. I've escaped from Vorkarian captivity with the help of Commander Juno, a Vorkarian defector. There was a long pause, filled only by the soft beeping of the pod systems. Finally, Admiral Steele's voice returned, tight with tension. Scott, are you saying there's a Vorkarian aboard that pod with you? Yes, sir, Terry confirmed. Commander Juno risked everything to help me escape. She's no longer aligned with the Vorkarian Empire. Another pause, this one stretching even longer. Understood, Scott. You are ordered to dock with the HSS Intrepid immediately. Prepare to be boarded upon arrival. As the communication cut off, Terry turned to Juno, seeing the apprehension in her alien features. It'll be all right, he assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at him. I'll vouch for you. The docking procedure was swift and efficient. As soon as the airlock sealed, armed guards swarmed into the pod, quickly separating Terry and Juno. Terry caught a last glimpse of the Vorkarian commander being led away, her tall form dwarfing the human guards around her. Terry found himself ushered into a debriefing room where Admiral Steele waited, his weathered face set in grim lines. All right, Scott, he said without preamble. Start from the beginning, and don't leave out a single detail about this Vorkarian. As Terry recounted his captivity and escape, emphasizing Juno's crucial role, he could see the Admiral's expression shifting from skepticism to intrigue. A Vorkarian defector, Steele mused when Terry finished. This could be an unprecedented opportunity for intelligence gathering, possibly even diplomacy. Sir, Terry pressed, leaning forward, I respectfully request that Commander Juno be treated fairly. Without her, I wouldn't be here. Steele's eyes narrowed, studying Terry intently. Your concern for the Vorkarian is noted, Scott. For now, she'll be held in a secure area and questioned. Dr. Cooper will perform a thorough medical examination. Meanwhile, in the Intrepid's medical bay, Juno stood rigidly as Dr. Elena Cooper ran a series of scans, her equipment humming softly. Remarkable, Dr. Cooper muttered, eyes fixed on her screens. Your physiological adaptability is far beyond what we previously believed possible for Vorkarians. Juno's antennae twitched with interest. Explain, she demanded, her translator conveying a mixture of curiosity and impatience. Dr. Cooper looked up, excitement clear in her eyes. Your body is already beginning to adjust to our atmosphere and gravity. The rate of adaptation is extraordinary. This could revolutionize our understanding of Vorkarian biology. As word of Juno's presence spread through the ship, reactions among the crew were mixed. Some saw it as a unique opportunity for peace, while others viewed the Vorkarian with suspicion and hostility. In the ship's mess hall, Captain Liam O'Neill banged his head on a table, drawing the attention of nearby crew members. A Vorkarian on our ship? He growled, his voice carrying across the room. Have we forgotten what these monsters have done to our colonies? A small crowd gathered around him, many nodding in agreement. "We can't trust it," one crewman added. "For all we know, this could be some kind of Vorkarian trick." O'Neill's eyes blazed with a mixture of grief and anger. "I lost my entire family to a Vorkarian attack," he said, his voice low and intense. "I'll be damned if I stand by while one of them roams free on this ship." The group around him murmured in support, the seeds of dissent taking root. Aware of the growing tensions, Admiral Steele made a decision. He summoned Terry to his ready room, his face grave. "Scott," he began, "I'm assigning you as liaison to the Vorkarian. Your job is to help her acclimate to our ways, and more importantly, to keep her safe. Not everyone on this ship is happy about her presence." Terry straightened, recognizing the weight of the responsibility. "I understand, sir. I won't let you down." As Terry left the ready room, his mind raced with the challenges ahead. He knew he was walking a fine line between duty and the strange connection he felt with Juno. But as he made his way to the secure area where she was being held, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced before. The door slid open, revealing Juno standing near the viewport, her alien silhouette stark against the backdrop of stars. She turned as Terry entered, her four eyes meeting his. "Terry," she said, her translator conveying a note of relief. "They've told me you're to be my liaison." Terry nodded, offering a small smile. "That's right. I'm here to help you understand us, and to help my people understand you." As they began to talk, neither of them aware of the gathering storm, both within the ship and beyond, in the vast expanse of space where the Vorkarian Empire was preparing its response to Juno's defection. Defection. The air in the secure area felt thick with unspoken tension. As Terry and Juno faced each other, the weight of their unprecedented situation settling upon them. Before they could delve deeper into conversation, a priority alert chimed on Terry's communicator. Admiral Steele's voice crackled through, terse and urgent. "Scott, report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation." Terry glanced at Juno, noting the way her antennae twitched with evident concern. "I have to go," he said, his voice low. "I'll be back as soon as I can. Try to rest if you can." Juno nodded, her four eyes blinking in rapid succession. "I will await your return, Terry Scott." As Terry hurried through the corridors of the Intrepid, he could sense the heightened state of alert among the crew. Whispered conversations ceased as he passed, replaced by wary glances and tense silence. The bridge was a hive of activity when Terry arrived. Admiral Steele stood at the center, his weathered face etched with lines of worry. Around him, officers moved with practiced efficiency, their fingers dancing over consoles as they processed incoming data. "Scott, good, you're here," Steele said, gesturing for Terry to join the gathering of senior officers. "We've received an ultimatum from the Vorkarian Empire." Captain Liam O'Neill, his face flushed with hardly restrained anger, spoke up. "They're demanding the immediate return of Commander Juno. We have 48 hours to comply, or they'll consider it an act of war." Terry felt his stomach lurch. "Sir, we can't just hand her over. She risked everything to help me escape." O'Neill's eyes flashed dangerously. "And now she's risking the lives of every human in this sector. We should return her immediately and be done with it." Admiral Steele raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "Gentlemen, we need to consider all our options. Scott, you've spent the most time with the Vorkarian. What's your assessment?" Terry took a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight his words would carry. "Sir, I believe Commander Juno possesses invaluable knowledge about Vorkarian military capabilities. If we can convince her to share that information, it could give us a significant advantage in negotiations or if it comes to war." The Admiral's eyes narrowed, considering Terry's words. After a moment of tense silence, he nodded. "Agreed. Scott, I'm ordering you to extract as much information as possible from Commander Juno before the deadline expires. Use whatever means necessary, but remember, we need her cooperation." As Terry left the bridge, his pupils dilating from the Admiral's order, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease settling in his gut. The thought of manipulating Juno for information felt wrong, a betrayal of the trust that had begun to form between them. When he returned to Juno's quarters, he found her in visible distress. Her tall frame was hunched, her exoskeleton quivering slightly. "Juno, what's wrong?" Terry asked, rushing to her side. Her mandibles clicked rapidly as she spoke, her translator struggling to keep up. "The gravity, it's not constant. It's causing discomfort." Terry cursed under his breath. The artificial gravity systems must be malfunctioning. He quickly contacted Dr. Elena Cooper, explaining the situation. Dr. Cooper arrived moments later, medical kit in hand. "I've prepared a specialized medication to help Commander Juno's body adapt to the fluctuating gravity," she explained as she administered the treatment. "It should take effect shortly." As Juno's discomfort began to ease, Terry found himself torn between his duty and his growing concern for her well-being. He knew he needed to question her about Vorkarian military tactics, but the sight of her vulnerability made him hesitate. Instead, he began to talk about human culture, explaining concepts that were foreign to Vorkarian society. "We value individual freedom and personal choice," he said, watching as Juno's antennae twitched with interest. "Our relationships, our emotional connections, they're central to who we are as a species." As they talked, the ship's gravity fluctuated again. Juno lost her balance, stumbling forward. Without thinking, Terry reached out to steady her, his hands grasping her arms. The moment their bodies made contact, something extraordinary happened. Juno's exoskeleton began to emit a soft, pulsating glow. The bioluminescence spread across her form, casting the room in an ethereal light. Startled, Juno pulled away, her four eyes wide with what Terry recognized as fear. What is happening to me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Terry, awestruck by the display, took a step towards her. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Is this normal for Vorkarians?" Juno shook her head, backing away further. "No, this has never happened before. I don't understand." Before Terry could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The door to Juno's quarters slid open, revealing Captain O'Neill, flanked by several armed security officers. "Step away from the Vorkarian, Scott," O'Neill ordered, his voice cold. "We're taking her back to her people before she gets us all killed." Terry's mind raced. He knew he couldn't let O'Neill take Juno. In a split-second decision, he grabbed Juno's hand and pulled her towards a maintenance shaft he had noticed earlier. "This way," he shouted, helping Juno into the cramped passageway. As they crawled through the ship's innards, Terry could hear O'Neill's furious orders echoing behind them. The shaft led them to the engine room, where they emerged to the surprised face of Chief Engineer Marcus Wong. "What in the name of—" Wong began, but Terry cut him off. "Marcus, we need your help," Terry said, quickly explaining the situation. Wong hesitated, his eyes darting between Terry, the still-glowing Juno, and the door. Finally, he nodded. "Behind the coolant regulators. Hurry." As Wong returned to his console, pretending to work on the malfunctioning gravity systems, Terry and Juno huddled in their hiding spot. The hum of machinery around them barely masked the sound of their rapid breathing. Admiral Steele's voice came over the intercom, ordering all crew to be on alert for the missing pair. Terry felt Juno tense beside him, her bioluminescence dimming slightly. "Terry," she whispered, her alien features etched with worry. "What will happen to us now?" Terry met her gaze, realizing that in this moment, huddled together in the depths of a human starship, their fates were irrevocably intertwined. The 48-hour deadline loomed over them, a ticking clock that could ignite an interstellar war. As they sat in silence, hidden from both human and Vorkarian forces, Terry knew that the choices they made in the coming hours would shape the future of both their species. The engine room hummed around them, a cacophony of human technology that seemed to underscore the vast differences between their worlds and the unlikely bond that had formed despite them. The engine room's hum became a cacophony of alarms and shouting as Chief Engineer Marcus Wong received an urgent communication from Admiral Steele. Wong's eyes darted nervously between his console and the hiding spot where Terry and Juno were concealed. "Wong here, Admiral," he answered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Initiate a shipwide scan for Vorkarian life signs immediately." Steele's voice crackled through the comm system. Wong's fingers hovered over the controls, his mind racing. "Aye, sir. Just need to calibrate the sensors for optimal accuracy. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes." As Wong stalled for time, Terry noticed Juno's increasing discomfort. Her bioluminescent glow intensified, casting eerie shadows in their cramped hiding space. Her exoskeleton quivered, and her 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "Juno, what's wrong?" Terry whispered, concern etching his features. "This space, too confined," Juno's translator conveyed, her voice strained. "Vorkarians require more open environments." Terry's mind raced. They couldn't stay here, but moving risked exposure. He caught Wong's eye and motioned him over. "Marcus, we need to move," Terry explained in hushed tones. "Is there anywhere else we can hide?" Wong hesitated, his gaze flicking between Terry and his console. Finally, he sighed. "There's a maintenance bay near the aft section, rarely used. It might buy you some time." Before Terry could respond, the engine room doors burst open. Captain O'Neill stormed in, flanked by armed security officers, their weapons trained on Wong. "Where are they, Wong?" O'Neill demanded, his face flushed with anger. Terry's hand found the plasma torch at his belt. In one fluid motion, he emerged from hiding. The torch ignited and pointed at a cluster of delicate coolant pipes. "Stand down, Captain," Terry ordered, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "Or I'll breach these pipes and take half the ship with us." O'Neill's eyes widened, his weapon wavering. "Scott, you've lost your mind. That alien has corrupted you." The standoff stretched on, tension thick in the air. Then Lieutenant Sarah Hawkins spotted Juno emerging from behind Terry, her body pulsing with bioluminescent light. "It's attacking!" Hawkins yelled, misinterpreting the glow. Her finger squeezed the trigger. Time seemed to slow. Terry saw the muzzle flash, heard Juno's startled click chirp. He moved to shield her, but it was too late. The shot went wide, striking a coolant pipeline. With a deafening hiss, cryogenic fluid began to spray into the engine room. "Containment breach!" Wong shouted, his fingers flying over his console. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, sealing off sections of the ship. The temperature plummeted rapidly. Frost formed on every surface, their breaths visible in the frigid air. Terry, Juno, O'Neill, Hawkins, and a handful of crew members found themselves trapped in the freezing engine room. "Everyone, huddle together," Terry commanded, taking charge of the situation. "We need to conserve body heat." The humans, teeth chattering, clustered together. Juno, her Vorkarian physiology more resistant to cold, stood apart, unsure. "Juno, come here," Terry called, extending his hand. "Your body temperature can help us." Hesitantly, Juno approached the group. O'Neill tensed as she neared, but the biting cold overrode his prejudice. Juno's warmth radiated through her exoskeleton, providing much-needed heat to the shivering humans. As they huddled together, Terry explained Juno's bioluminescence. "It's not a weapon. It's a sign of emotional distress. She's as scared as we are." O'Neill's eyes met Juno's, seeing fear and uncertainty reflected in her alien gaze. His expression softened slightly. Admiral Steele's voice crackled over the intercom, barely audible over the hissing of escaping coolant. "Engine room, this is Steele. The cryogenic leak has compromised hull integrity. We can't reach you directly. You need to make your way to bulkhead 17A for extraction. It's your only chance." Terry looked at the group, his eyebrows furrowed. "All right, we move together. Juno, you're more resistant to the cold. Can you help support those who are weakening?" Juno's antennae twitched in affirmation. "I will assist," her translator conveyed. They set off through the icy passageways, their progress slow and treacherous. Juno's strength proved invaluable as she helped the humans navigate the slippery floors and tight spaces. As they neared a junction, the ship suddenly lurched violently. The deck plates vibrated beneath their feet, and a distant boom echoed through the hull. "We're under attack," O'Neill shouted, steadying himself against a frozen bulkhead. Before anyone could respond, a section of the ceiling collapsed. Terry pushed Juno clear, but found himself separated from the rest of the group by a wall of twisted metal and sparking circuitry. "Terry!" Juno called. her translator unable to fully convey the panic in her alien voice. "I'm okay," Terry shouted back. "Keep moving to the extraction point. I'll find another way around." As the others reluctantly continued on, Terry turned to face the destruction before him. The ship shuddered again under another impact, and he knew time was running out. Beside him, Juno's bioluminescence suddenly shifted, changing from its usual blue-green to a deep, pulsating purple. She stumbled, her limbs trembling. "Juno, what's happening?" Terry asked, steadying her with his hands. I don't know," Juno's translator stuttered. "I feel strange, different." As Terry held her, he felt an unfamiliar warmth radiating from her exoskeleton. Her 4 eyes locked onto his, filled with a mixture of fear and something else, something he'd never seen in a Vorkarian before. With a start, Terry realized what might be happening. The extreme stress, the life-threatening situation, their growing connection, it was triggering some kind of mating response in Juno's alien biology. The ship rocked again, more violently this time. Sparks showered from damaged conduits, and the groan of stressed metal filled the air. Terry knew they had to move, but Juno clung to him, overwhelmed by the alien sensations coursing through her body. As he held her, torn between duty and the unprecedented situation unfolding between them, Terry's mind raced. The fate of 2 species, the threat of war, and now this unexpected biological development, it all hinged on the decisions he would make in the next few moments. With the sound of battle raging outside and Juno trembling in his arms, Terry steeled himself for what lay ahead. They had to reach the others, had to make it to the extraction point. But as he looked into Juno's alien eyes, he realized their journey had become far more complex than a simple race for survival. Survival. As Terry gazed into Juno's alien eyes, the ship lurched violently, throwing them off balance. The deck plates beneath their feet vibrated with an ominous intensity, and a distant boom echoed through the hull. "We're under attack," Terry shouted, steadying himself against a frozen bulkhead. Before Juno could respond, the world around them seemed to shift. The familiar pull of gravity vanished, leaving them suddenly weightless. Terry's stomach lurched as he felt his feet leave the floor, his body drifting upward. "What's happening?" he gasped, flailing his arms in a desperate attempt to find purchase. Juno's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, her antennae twitching. "Artificial gravity failure," her translator conveyed, the electronic voice oddly calm in the chaos. Terry's mind raced, trying to process their new predicament. He reached out, grasping at the air, but his fingers found nothing solid. Panic began to set in as he realized he was slowly drifting away from Juno, moving towards a jagged piece of debris. In a flash of movement, Juno's alien form glided through the zero-gravity environment with surprising grace. Her elongated limbs propelled her forward, and her hand, so different from his own, grasped Terry's wrist firmly. "I have you," Juno's translator conveyed, her grip unyielding as she pulled Terry back to safety. As their bodies made contact, Terry felt a jolt of electricity run through him. Juno's bioluminescence, which had been a soft blue-green, suddenly shifted to a vibrant purple. The pulsating light intensified, casting eerie shadows across the floating debris around them. Terry's eyes widened as he noticed the change. "Juno, you're light. It's different." Juno's body trembled, her exoskeleton quivering beneath Terry's touch. Her 4 eyes locked onto his, filled with a mixture of confusion and something else, something primal and urgent. "I feel strange," Juno's translator stuttered. "My body, changing." As they clung to each other, navigating the treacherous floating debris field of the engine room, Terry became acutely aware of a new scent emanating from Juno. It was alien, yet intoxicating, awakening something deep within him. He found himself drawn to her, his heart racing not just from the danger they faced, but from their proximity. "We need to keep moving," Terry said, his voice husky. He swallowed hard, trying to focus on their survival. "The extraction point can't be far." They propelled themselves forward, using pieces of debris as makeshift handholds. Juno's Vorkarian physiology gave her a clear advantage in the zero-gravity environment, and she guided Terry through the floating obstacle course with surprising efficiency. As they neared a sealed bulkhead, Terry's comm unit crackled to life. Admiral Steele's voice cut through the static. "Scott, do you read me? We have a situation up here." "I read you, Admiral," Terry responded, his free hand working to pry open an access panel near the bulkhead. "What's going on?" "The Vorkarian vessel is demanding immediate communication with Juno," Steele explained, his voice tense. "Their commander, General Zax, is threatening to open fire if we don't comply." Terry's eyes met Juno's, seeing the fear and uncertainty reflected in her alien gaze. "We're trapped in the engine room, sir. Artificial gravity is down, and we're trying to reach the extraction point." "Understood. I'm buying us some time, but you need to hurry. And Scott, we may need Juno's help to defuse this situation." As the communication ended, Terry refocused on the task at hand. His fingers danced across the exposed circuitry of the access panel, attempting to override the bulkhead security protocols. The zero-gravity environment made the work challenging, and he found his concentration wavering as Juno's scent grew stronger. "Almost. Got it," Terry muttered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill of the engine room. With a hiss, the bulkhead began to slide open. Terry allowed himself a moment of triumph before gesturing for Juno to go through first. As she glided past him, a piece of floating debris struck her side, tearing her protective suit. Juno let out a startled click chirp, her translator unable to convey the alien sound. The tear in her suit exposed a section of her exoskeleton, glistening with an iridescent sheen. Terry's breath caught in his throat as the full force of Juno's pheromones hit him. His head swam, and he felt a surge of heat coursing through his body. He gripped the edge of the bulkhead, trying to steady himself both physically and mentally. "Terry?" Juno's translator conveyed, her tone tinged with concern. "Are you unwell?" He shook his head, struggling to form words. I'm okay. We need to keep moving." As they continued their journey through the weightless wreckage of the engine room, Terry found it increasingly difficult to maintain his composure. Every brush of Juno's alien form against his sent shivers down his spine. He tried to distance himself, to focus on their dire situation, but the confined space and zero-gravity environment made it nearly impossible. Juno, too, seemed to be struggling with her own reactions. Her bioluminescence pulsed erratically, and her movements became less coordinated. She clung to Terry, her alien fingers intertwining with his, in a gesture that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. As they approached another junction, the sound of voices echoed through the corridors. Terry's heart leaped. The rescue team must be close. "Hello," he called out, his voice hoarse. "We're over here." The voices grew louder, and Terry could make out the clank of magnetic boots on metal. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. A sudden shift in the debris field sent him and Juno tumbling through the air. They collided, their bodies pressed together as they spun slowly in the zero-gravity environment. Time seemed to stand still as Terry found himself face-to-face with Juno, her alien features mere inches from his own. Her four eyes blinked rapidly, and her antennae quivered with an intensity he had never seen before. The purple glow of her bioluminescence enveloped them both, creating a surreal bubble in the chaos of the destroyed engine room. "Juno," Terry whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Before he could finish his thought, a beam of light cut through the darkness. The rescue team had arrived, their expressions a mixture of relief and shock as they took in the scene before them. "We've found them," one of the team members called into his comm unit. "But sir, you're not going to believe what we're seeing." As the rescue team moved to secure Terry and Juno, the comm unit crackled with Admiral Steele's voice. "Get them to the medical bay immediately and prepare for diplomatic negotiations. The future of human-Vorkarian relations may depend on what happens next." Terry and Juno exchanged a look of apprehension and something deeper, a shared understanding that their lives and the fate of their species had become irrevocably intertwined. As the rescue team guided them towards safety, both human and Vorkarian knew that the most challenging part of their journey was yet to come. The rescue team guided Terry and Juno through the debris-filled corridors of the damaged ship, their magnetic boots clanking against the metal floors. As they approached the medical bay, Terry felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The adrenaline that had kept him going was fading, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. Dr. Elena Cooper met them at the entrance, her eyes widening as she took in the sight of Terry and Juno. "Get them to exam room 3, she ordered, her voice tight with urgency. Terry felt himself being lowered onto an examination table, the familiar pull of gravity returning as they entered a section of the ship with functioning systems. He turned his head, seeking out Juno. She was on a nearby table, her alien form still pulsing with that mesmerizing purple glow. "Juno," he called out, his voice hoarse, "are you okay?" Her antennae twitched, and her translator conveyed a weak response. "I am uncertain. My body feels strange." Dr. Cooper moved between them, her hands flying over various instruments. "I need you both to remain still," she said, her tone professional but tinged with barely concealed excitement. "We're picking up some highly unusual readings." Terry closed his eyes, trying to focus on his breathing as the medical team bustled around him. He could hear the rapid-fire exchange of medical jargon, punctuated by exclamations of surprise and disbelief. "Sir," one of the junior doctors addressed Dr. Cooper, "I think you need to see this." Terry opened his eyes to see Dr. Cooper staring at a holographic display, her face a mask of astonishment. "This is unprecedented," she murmured. Before Terry could ask what was happening, Admiral Steele's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Cooper, what's the status of our patients?" Cooper straightened, her eyes never leaving the display. "Admiral, we need to quarantine them immediately. The physiological changes we're seeing, they're like nothing we've ever encountered." Terry's heart raced. "Quarantine? But we're not sick, are we?" Dr. Cooper turned to him, her expression a mix of sympathy and scientific fascination. "Not sick, no. But you and Juno are changing in ways we don't yet understand. We need to isolate you for your safety and ours while we study what's happening." Within hours, Terry and Juno found themselves in a specially prepared quarantine unit within the medical bay. The room was spartanly furnished but comfortable, with separate sleeping areas and a common space for them to interact. One wall was dominated by a large observation window, behind which a team of human and Vorkarian scientists worked tirelessly, monitoring their every move. Days passed in a blur of medical tests and debriefings. Terry watched with a mix of awe and trepidation as Juno's bioluminescence gradually stabilized into a constant, soft glow. He found himself drawn to it, feeling a sense of calm whenever he was near her. "Your pheromone levels are off the charts," Dr. Cooper informed them during one of her daily visits. She stood on the other side of a transparent barrier, her voice coming through a speaker system. "And Terry, your body seems to be producing compounds that, well, they're resonating with Juno's altered biology in ways we've never seen before." Terry glanced at Juno, who was sitting nearby, her 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession. "What does that mean for us?" he asked. Dr. Cooper shook her head. "We're still trying to figure that out, but one thing's clear. You two are adapting to each other on a fundamental level." As the days wore on, Terry and Juno found themselves at the center of a diplomatic storm. Admiral Steele arranged a series of video conferences with key figures from both human and Vorkarian leadership. Terry felt like a specimen under a microscope as he recounted their experiences, from their first meeting on the Doomsayer to their harrowing journey through the damaged engine room. During one such conference, General Zax's face filled the screen, his alien features set in a stern expression. "Explain again," he demanded, "how you assisted each other during the crisis." Terry described how Juno had guided him through the zero-gravity environment, her Vorkarian physiology giving her a natural advantage. He spoke of their teamwork, the way they had instinctively worked together to overcome obstacles. As he talked, he noticed a subtle shift in General Zax's demeanor. The Vorkarian leader's antenna twitched with interest, and his voice lost some of its harshness. "This cooperation," Zax said slowly, "it is unexpected." The political implications of their situation became increasingly clear as the quarantine stretched on. Terry overheard heated debates among the scientists about the nature of his and Juno's relationship. Words like free will and biological manipulation were thrown around, adding to his growing sense of unease. One evening, as Terry and Juno sat in the common area of their quarantine unit, Captain Liam O'Neill appeared at the observation window. His face was grim, but there was a determined set to his jaw. "I wanted you both to know," O'Neill said, his voice coming through the speaker system, "that I'm fighting for you out there. What you two represent, it could be the key to lasting peace between our species." Terry felt a surge of gratitude towards the captain. "Thank you, sir," he said, his voice thick with emotion. As O'Neill left, Terry turned to Juno. She was watching him with an intensity that made his heart race. "Terry," her translator conveyed, "I am experiencing feelings, strong feelings, for you." Terry swallowed hard, acutely aware of the scientists watching them from behind the observation window. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too." Before he could say more, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the quarantine unit in an eerie glow. Terry jumped to his feet, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "What's happening?" he shouted. But the observation room was empty, the scientists having rushed off to respond to the emergency. Suddenly, the door to their quarantine unit slid open with a hiss. Terry and Juno exchanged a look of surprise and dedication. "We should stay here," Terry said, even as he felt an overwhelming urge to act. Juno's antenna quivered. "The ship is in danger," her translator conveyed. "We can help." As another violent shudder rocked the ship, Terry made his decision. "Let's go," he said, reaching for Juno's alien hand. Together they stepped out of their quarantine unit and into the chaos of a ship under attack, their bodies humming with a mixture of fear, excitement, and an undeniable attraction that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. As they raced through the corridors of the ship, alarms blaring and emergency lights flashing, Terry felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. Juno moved with fluid grace beside him, her bioluminescence pulsing in sync with the ship's warning lights. They reached the bridge to find chaos unfolding. Captain O'Neill was barking orders as crew members scrambled to their stations. Through the viewport, Terry saw the sleek, predatory form of a Vorkarian attack vessel, its weapons primed and ready. "Rogue Vorkarian faction," O'Neill explained tersely as he noticed Terry and Juno. "They're demanding we hand over all Vorkarian crew members or face destruction." Before Terry could respond, the ship shuddered violently under enemy fire. Sparks flew from a nearby console, and the acrid smell of burning circuits filled the air. "Shields at 60%, a crewman called out. Admiral Steele's voice crackled over the comm system. "All hands, prepare for emergency maneuvers. Engineering, I need those warp drives online now." Terry instinctively reached for Juno, steadying her as the ship lurched. Her alien skin felt electric under his touch, sending a jolt through his system that momentarily distracted him from the crisis at hand. "We need to get you two to safety," O'Neill said, gesturing to a nearby security officer. "Escort them to the escape pods." "No," Terry interrupted, surprising himself with his vehemence. "We can help. Juno's knowledge of Vorkarian tactics could be crucial." O'Neill hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Fine, but stay out of the way." As the battle raged on, Terry and Juno worked in tandem, their newfound connection allowing them to anticipate each other's thoughts and movements. Juno's insights into Vorkarian battle strategies proved invaluable, helping the human crew outmaneuver their attackers. Hours later, as the HMS Intrepid limped away from the encounter, leaving the disabled Vorkarian vessel behind, Terry felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The immediate danger had passed, but he knew their ordeal was just getting started. Admiral Steele's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression grave. "Captain O'Neill, set course for Starbase Omega. We need repairs, and I want our special guest transferred to a more secure location." Terry felt Juno tense beside him. Her translator conveyed her question. "What will happen to us now?" The journey to Starbase Omega was tense and uncomfortable. Terry and Juno were confined to their quarters, under constant guard. The few times they were allowed out for medical checkups, Terry could feel the stares of the crew, a mix of curiosity, fear, and in some cases, barely concealed hostility. As they approached the massive space station, its gleaming structures stretching out into the void, Terry pressed his face against the viewport in his quarters. I've never seen anything like it, he breathed. Juno moved closer, her alien features reflected in the transparent material. It is impressive, her translator conveyed, a note of awe in the synthetic voice. The docking procedure seemed to take forever. When the airlock finally opened, they were greeted by a contingent of security personnel led by a stern-faced woman with close-cropped gray hair. "I'm Colonel Reyes," she announced crisply. "You'll be coming with us." They were escorted through the station's winding corridors, passing curious onlookers and busy work crews. Terry tried to memorize the route, but the twists and turns soon had him disoriented. Finally, they arrived at a section of the station that seemed newer than the rest. A sign on the wall read Xenobiology Research Wing. "This will be your home for the foreseeable future," Colonel Reyes informed them as they approached a set of heavy doors. "For your own safety and the safety of others, you'll be under quarantine until further notice." The doors slid open to reveal a spacious suite, comfortably furnished but with an unmistakable clinical feel. One wall was dominated by a large observation window, behind which Terry could see an array of scientific equipment. As they entered, Dr. Elena Cooper emerged from an adjacent room, her face lighting up with awe-inspiring excitement. "Terry, Juno, welcome," she said warmly. "I know this isn't ideal, but I promise we'll make you as comfortable as possible while we continue our research." Terry nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and trepidation. He turned to Juno, noticing that her bioluminescence had intensified, casting a soft purple glow around her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Juno's antennae twitched, and her four eyes blinked in rapid succession. "I am uncertain," her translator conveyed. "This place feels strange, but I am glad you are here with me." Dr. Cooper cleared her throat, drawing their attention. "I know you both must be exhausted, but I'd like to run some preliminary scans if you're up for it. The sooner we can establish a baseline, the better." Terry and Juno exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As the days turned into weeks, Terry and Juno settled into a routine of medical tests, debriefings, and long hours of confinement. Dr. Cooper and her team worked tirelessly, monitoring their vital signs and studying the ongoing changes in their physiology. One morning, as Terry was undergoing yet another series of scans, he overheard Dr. Cooper speaking in hushed tones with one of her colleagues. "The protein complex, it's unlike anything we've ever seen," she was saying, her voice filled with awe-inspiring excitement. "If we can isolate it, the implications for interspecies biology could be revolutionary." Terry's mind raced with the possibilities. Could their unique condition hold the key to better understanding between humans and Vorkarians? His thoughts were interrupted by a commotion outside the lab. Raised voices echoed down the corridor, growing louder by the moment. "I demand to see them immediately," a deep, resonant voice boomed. Terry recognized it instantly. General Zax, the formidable Vorkarian military leader. The lab doors slid open, revealing the imposing figure of General Zax, flanked by a delegation of Vorkarian officials and scientists. Admiral Steele followed close behind, his face a mask of diplomatic calm. "Ah, there you are," Zax rumbled, his four eyes fixing on Juno. "We have much to discuss, young one." As Terry watched the Vorkarian delegation file into the lab, he felt a sudden protective urge toward Juno. Whatever happened next, he knew their lives had become irrevocably intertwined, not just with each other, but with the fate of human-Vorkarian relations. The air in the lab crackled with tension as human and Vorkarian scientists eyed each other warily, their mutual distrust palpable. In the center of it all stood Terry and Juno, their bodies instinctively drawing closer together as they faced the scrutiny of both their peoples. Species. Terry felt a surge of protectiveness towards Juno, his hand instinctively reaching for hers. As their fingers intertwined, a soft purple glow emanated from their joined hands, drawing curious glances from both humans and Vorkarians alike. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station, their shrill wails cutting through the tense atmosphere. Red emergency lights bathed the lab in an eerie glow, casting long shadows across the faces of those present. "What's happening?" Terry demanded, his heart racing. Admiral Steele pressed a finger to his earpiece, his expression grave. The rogue Vorkarian faction has tracked us here. They're demanding we hand over all Vorkarian personnel, including Juno. General Zax's antennae quivered with anger. This is outrageous. We cannot bow to the demands of extremists. As the two leaders argued, Terry's mind raced. He looked at Juno, her four eyes wide with fear, and made a decision. Dr. Cooper, he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos, we need to address both sides directly. It's the only way to prevent this from escalating further. Dr. Cooper hesitated, her gaze darting between Terry and the agitated leaders. I'm not sure that's wise, Terry. The situation is extremely volatile. Exactly, Terry pressed. That's why we need to act now. Juno and I are living proof that our species can coexist. We might be the only ones who can stop this. After a moment of tense deliberation, Dr. Cooper nodded. All right, I'll arrange it. But be careful. Minutes later, Terry and Juno found themselves on the station's main observation deck. Through the vast windows, they could see the looming shapes of both human and Vorkarian ships, weapons primed and ready. The air was thick with tension as delegates from both sides filed in, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Terry took a deep breath, his hands still firmly clasped with Juno's. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on them, the weight of two species' futures resting on their shoulders. With a reassuring squeeze of Juno's hand, he began to speak. Look at us, Terry said, his voice clear and steady. A human and a Vorkarian, standing here together. Not as enemies, not as reluctant allies, but as two beings who have found understanding and connection across the stars. He turned to face Juno, his eyes locked with hers. When I first met Juno, I was afraid. I saw her as alien, as other. But in our time together, I've discovered a kindred spirit, a being capable of courage, compassion, and love. Juno's antennae quivered with emotion as she took over, her newly acquired grasp of human language allowing her to address the crowd directly. I too once feared humans, she said, her synthetic voice tinged with warmth. I believed the stories of their aggression, their unpredictability, but Terry has shown me that humans are capable of great empathy and understanding. As they spoke, their intertwined bodies began to glow more intensely. The bioluminescence pulsed in perfect synchronization, casting a mesmerizing light across the observation deck. The assembled delegates watched in awe as the display grew brighter, a visual representation of the bond between human and Vorkarian. This connection we share, Terry continued, gesturing to their glowing forms, it's not just physical, it's a bridge between our species, a promise of what we can achieve together. Juno nodded, her four eyes blinking in rapid succession. We stand before you not as separate entities, but as a symbol of unity, a glimpse of a future where humans and Vorkarians work side by side, learn from each other, and grow together. As they finished speaking, a hushed silence fell over the observation deck. The tension in the air was palpable as both sides processed their words. Then, in a moment that would be remembered for generations to come, Terry gently cupped Juno's face in his hands. Time seemed to slow as Terry leaned in, his lips meeting Juno's in a tender kiss. The reaction was immediate and astonishing. Their bioluminescence flared brightly, bathing the entire deck in a warm, pulsating glow. Gasps of surprise and wonder echoed through the room. But the true shock came moments later. As Terry and Juno separated, they noticed movement among the crowd. Other Vorkarians on the station began to exhibit similar bioluminescent patterns, their bodies responding to the humans nearest to them. The realization dawned on everyone present. The adaptation Terry and Juno had undergone wasn't unique. It was a latent potential within both species, awakened by their groundbreaking interaction. General Zax stepped forward, his usually stern features softened by awe. This changes everything, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned to Admiral Steele, antennae twitching with newfound respect. Perhaps it is time we truly join forces. Admiral Steele nodded solemnly, extending his hand. For the good of both our peoples. As the two leaders shook hands, a cheer went up from the assembled delegates. The atmosphere on the observation deck transformed from one of tension to one of hope and excitement. Scientists from both species immediately began discussing the implications of this discovery, their previous mistrust forgotten in the face of this new frontier of knowledge. In the midst of the celebration, Terry and Juno stood together, their bodies still glowing softly. "We did it," Terry murmured, his heart swelling with pride and love. Juno's antennae brushed against his cheek in a gesture of affection. "No, Terry," she replied, her synthetic voice filled with warmth. "We have only just begun." As news of the events on the observation deck spread throughout the station and to the ships beyond, the rogue Vorkarian faction found itself in an untenable position. Faced with this unprecedented display of unity between humans and Vorkarians, their hardline stance began to crumble. Within hours, they had withdrawn their forces, their threats of violence replaced by cautious requests for negotiation. In the days that followed, Terry and Juno found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Scientists clamored to study their unique physiology, diplomats sought their advice on fostering interspecies relations, and media from both Earth and Vorkaria vied for interviews. But amidst the chaos, Terry and Juno remained focused on each other and the future they hoped to build. As they stood together in Dr. Cooper's lab, undergoing yet another round of tests, Terry couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. "You know," he said, watching as Dr. Cooper analyzed their latest scans, "a few months ago, I never would have imagined any of this. Being here, with you, changing the course of history." Juno's antennae twitched in what Terry had come to recognize as amusement. "Life is full of surprises, is it not?" her translator conveyed. "I believe humans have a saying, 'The best is yet to come.'" Dr. Cooper looked up from her console, her eyes shining with excitement. "You have no idea how right you are," she said, gesturing for them to come closer. "These latest results, they're absolutely groundbreaking. The implications for medical science alone are staggering." As Dr. Cooper launched into a detailed explanation of their findings, Terry and Juno exchanged a look of shared understanding. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, pioneers of a new era of human-Vorkarian relations.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.